Welcome to History Facts and Mysteries. Today, we're going on a journey into the world of one of history's most feared and fascinating groups, the Vikings. From their legendary raids on European shores to their explorations far beyond their homeland, the Norsemen left a mark on history that still resonates today. But who were these warriors? How did they shape the world, and what drove them to venture into the unknown? Before we dive into the depths of Viking history, make sure to subscribe to History Facts and Mysteries, and hit the bell icon so you don't miss out on our exploration of history's most captivating tales. Now, let's begin our exploration of the Vikings, the Norse warriors who changed the world. Who were the Vikings? The term Viking often conjures images of ferocious raiders with horned helmets, massive wooden ships cutting through the waves, and brutal conquests that left entire villages in flames. While some of these depictions contain elements of truth, the reality of who the Vikings were is far more complex and fascinating. The Vikings were a diverse and resourceful group of seafaring people from the Scandinavian regions, what are now Denmark, Norway, and Sweden, who lived during the Viking Age, which lasted from approximately 793 AD to 1066 AD. Their influence stretched far beyond their homelands, reaching as far west as North America, as far east as the Middle East, and deep into the heart of Europe and Russia. The word Viking itself comes from the Old Norse term Vikingur, meaning pirate or raider. However, not all Vikings were warriors or raiders. Many were farmers, traders, explorers, and skilled craftsmen, contributing to the growth of commerce and cultural exchange across continents. They established trade routes that connected the northern world to the wealth of the Byzantine Empire and the Islamic caliphates, dealing in goods like furs, amber, and even slaves. In addition to their military prowess, the Vikings were master shipbuilders, creating revolutionary longships that enabled them to navigate both open seas and shallow rivers with remarkable speed and agility. Their ability to adapt to different cultures allowed them to integrate into societies, whether through trade, diplomacy, or conquest. This adaptability made them a formidable force in the medieval world and left a lasting impact on the regions they explored, from the founding of cities in Russia to their brief but historic settlement in North America. Far more than just raiders, the Vikings were a dynamic civilization whose influence reshaped history in ways still felt today. Their legacy lives on in language, place names, and even the genetic heritage of the many lands they touched. The beginning of the Viking Age, the raid on Lindisfarne. The Viking Age is often said to have begun in 793 AD with the infamous raid on the Lindisfarne Monastery, a sacred site located on the northeastern coast of England. This attack was not just another skirmish. It sent shockwaves through medieval Europe, marking the Norse as a fearsome and unpredictable force. Lindisfarne, home to a Christian monastery founded in the 7th century, was one of the most important religious centers in the Anglo-Saxon world. Monasteries like this were rich in gold, silver, and precious manuscripts, making them prime targets for plunder. But beyond wealth, they were also seen as symbolic targets, as the Vikings, who still followed their own Norse gods, had little regard for Christian sanctuaries. The attack and its aftermath. The Viking raid on Lindisfarne was swift and brutal. Norse warriors stormed the monastery, slaughtering monks, looting treasures, and burning parts of the settlement. Some monks were taken as slaves, while others managed to flee, spreading news of the attack across Europe. This raid was particularly horrifying to Christian leaders because monasteries were considered places of peace and divine protection. If such a holy site could fall to pagan raiders, what did that mean for the rest of Christendom? The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle recorded the event with a sense of dread. In this year came dreadful forewarnings over the land of the Northumbrians, terrifying the people most woefully. Immense flashes of lightning and fiery dragons were seen flying in the sky. These signs were soon followed by a great famine, and a little after those same days, on the 8th of June, the ravaging of heathen men miserably destroyed God's church in Lindisfarne with plunder and slaughter. The attack on Lindisfarne marked the beginning of a new era of Norse expansion and warfare. Over the next decades, Viking raids would intensify, striking at monasteries and settlements across the British Isles, Ireland, and continental Europe. Why did the Vikings begin raiding? While Lindisfarne was the most famous early raid, it was not an isolated incident. The Vikings' motivation for launching these attacks was complex and driven by multiple factors. 1. Economic necessity. The Scandinavian homelands had limited farmland and resources. As populations grew, young warriors sought wealth through raiding, trade, and territorial expansion. 2. Political instability. Many Viking chieftains needed to prove their strength to maintain power, and successful raids brought wealth and prestige. 3. Technological superiority. The Vikings were expert shipbuilders. Their longships, fast and maneuverable, allowed them to strike coastal settlements with little warning and retreat before counterattacks could be mounted. 4. Desire for new lands. Scandinavia had a harsh climate and limited agricultural land. Many Vikings sought to settle in fertile territories, leading to later colonization efforts in places like England, Ireland, and France. 5. Religious and cultural factors. Viking warriors sought glory and a place in Valhalla, the Norse afterlife for those who died heroically in battle. Additionally, they had little respect for Christian symbols and saw monasteries as weak and defenseless targets. Lindisfarne. A prelude to greater conquests, the Lindisfarne was one of the first major Viking attacks. It was only the beginning. In the following decades, Viking raids became more frequent, organized, and devastating. The Norse expanded their operations, not only plundering but also establishing settlements and taking control of territories. By the mid-9th century, they had taken York, established the Danelaw in England, and even laid siege to Paris. Lindisfarne remains one of the most symbolic moments in Viking history, not just as the start of their raids, but as a turning point that reshaped medieval Europe. The Vikings: raiders, traders, and explorers. While raids were the most notorious aspect of Viking activity, they were also skilled traders and explorers. The Vikings established extensive trade networks across Europe, Asia, and even the Americas. They traded goods like furs, timber, iron, and slaves for precious items such as silver, spices, and silk. These trade routes helped to spread Viking culture and influence far beyond the reaches of their raids. Viking explorers were some of the first Europeans to travel across the North Atlantic. Led by figures like Leif Erikson, the Vikings reached places that were previously unknown to Europeans. In the early 11th century, Erikson sailed to what is today Newfoundland, Canada, and established a settlement at a place known as Vinland. This predates Christopher Columbus's arrival in the Americas by nearly 500 years. The Vikings also explored parts of the Mediterranean, including the coasts of North Africa and the Byzantine Empire, and established trading routes that connected the East and West. Through these contacts, the Vikings gained access to valuable commodities and new cultural influences, which contributed to their growing power and influence. The Vikings as settlers, the Danelaw and Viking kingdoms. In addition to their raiding and exploration, the Vikings were also successful settlers. In the 9th and 10th centuries, Vikings began to establish permanent settlements in the lands they had raided. One of the most significant of these was the Danelaw, a region in England that was ruled by Viking chieftains and settlers. The Danelaw covered much of northeastern England and was home to a thriving Viking culture. The Vikings in the Danelaw integrated with the local Anglo-Saxon population, and over time, they became an integral part of English society. They brought with them their language, customs, and legal systems, which had a lasting impact on the development of English culture. In Ireland, the Vikings founded the city of Dublin, which became a major center of trade and commerce. They also settled in parts of France, most notably in Normandy, which was named after the Norsemen who settled there. These Viking settlers eventually became known as the Normans, and they played a key role in European history, most famously with William the Conqueror's invasion of England in 1066. Viking culture, society, religion, and mythology. Viking society was complex and highly structured, with a hierarchical system based on kinship, wealth, and status. At the top of the social order were the kings and chieftains, powerful leaders who ruled over territories, led their people in war, and ensured the enforcement of law and order. These rulers were often chosen based on their ability to lead in battle and provide for their people, though lineage also played a significant role. Below them were the jarls, noble landowners and warlords who controlled large estates and commanded their own warriors. They were responsible for governing regions, collecting tribute, and providing military support to their king. Beneath the jarls were the carls, or free men and women, who made up the bulk of Viking society. They were farmers, traders, blacksmiths, shipbuilders, and artisans, skilled individuals who contributed to the Viking economy and daily life. At the lowest level of society were the thralls, enslaved individuals captured during Viking raids or born into servitude. Thralls performed manual labor, working on farms, in households, or on construction projects. While slavery was common in Viking culture, some thralls could eventually buy their freedom or be granted it by their masters. Religion and mythology. The Vikings were deeply spiritual people, and their beliefs revolved around a pantheon of gods and goddesses who controlled different aspects of the world. Their mythology was a rich and intricate system of legends, rituals, and cosmic events that explained the nature of existence and the forces that shaped their lives. At the center of Viking religious belief was Odin, the All-Father and chief of the gods. He was associated with wisdom, war, poetry, and death, often depicted as a one-eyed wanderer who sought knowledge at any cost. Odin ruled over Valhalla, the great hall where fallen warriors, known as Einherjar, would feast and prepare for Ragnarok, the prophesied end of the world. Another major deity was Thor, the god of thunder and protector of mankind. Wielding his mighty hammer, Mjolnir, Thor was the Vikings' primary defender against the giants and other cosmic threats. Many warriors called upon Thor for strength and protection before heading into battle. Freya, the goddess of love, beauty, and fertility, was also a powerful figure in Norse mythology. She presided over Folkvanger, another afterlife realm where half of the warriors who died in battle were said to reside, with the other half going to Valhalla. The Vikings believed in a vast and intricate cosmos held together by Yggdrasil, the world tree, which connected the 9 realms of existence, including Asgard, home of the gods, Midgard, the world of humans, and Helheim, the realm of the dead. Their myths told of epic battles, heroic deeds, and cosmic cycles of destruction and rebirth, culminating in Ragnarok, when the gods themselves would fall, and the world would be reborn anew. Influence on Viking society. These religious beliefs deeply shaped Viking culture, influencing everything from social customs to warfare. The promise of Valhalla encouraged warriors to fight bravely, as dying in battle was seen as the most honorable fate. Viking burials were elaborate, with the deceased often buried with weapons, tools, and sometimes even sacrificed animals or thralls, ensuring they would be well equipped for the afterlife. Beyond warfare, Viking religion played a role in daily life, with rituals, feasts, and sacrifices performed to appease the gods. Blots, or offerings of food, drink, or animals, were common in religious ceremonies held at temples, sacred groves, or private homes. Even after the Vikings gradually converted to Christianity by the late 11th century, many of their myths and traditions persisted, influencing Scandinavian folklore and storytelling for centuries. Today, Viking mythology continues to captivate the modern imagination, inspiring literature, films, and even popular culture. The end of the Viking Age, the Battle of Stamford Bridge and the Norman conquest. The Viking Age came to an end in the 11th century, and its decline was marked by several key events. One of the most important was the Battle of Stamford Bridge in 1066, where the forces of the English king, Harold Godwinson, defeated the Viking army led by Harald Hardrada of Norway. Hardrada's death at Stamford Bridge effectively ended Viking raids on England. That same year, the Norman conquest of England, led by William the Conqueror, further cemented the end of Viking dominance in Britain. The Normans, descendants of Viking settlers in France, invaded England and established their own kingdom. Although the Normans were culturally influenced by their Viking ancestors, they represented a new wave of power that displaced the last remnants of the Viking rule. Viking legacy, the lasting influence on the world. Though the Viking Age came to an end, the legacy of the Norsemen continued to shape the world for centuries to come. The Vikings left an indelible mark on the cultures they encountered, influencing everything from language and architecture to governance and exploration. In England, many place names still bear traces of Viking influence. Cities like York, Derby, and Nottingham all have names that come from Old Norse, and the Viking contribution to the English language is still evident today. Words like sky, egg, knife, window, and husband all have Old Norse origins. Additionally, Viking legal traditions and societal structures helped shape the medieval English legal system, leaving an imprint on laws and governance that can still be traced in modern times. Beyond Britain, the Vikings played a significant role in shaping the political and cultural landscape of continental Europe. They established the Duchy of Normandy in France, where Viking leader Rollo and his descendants would go on to influence European history, most notably through William the Conqueror, who invaded England in 1066. In Eastern Europe, Viking traders and warriors, known as the Varangians, helped lay the foundations of the Kievan Rus, the precursor to modern Russia, Ukraine, and Belarus. The Viking influence on Scandinavian culture is perhaps the most enduring. Their maritime expertise, warrior ethos, and legal traditions contributed to the development of modern Scandinavian societies. Norse mythology and Viking sagas, passed down through generations, continue to inspire literature, films, and even political movements. Today, many Scandinavian countries proudly celebrate their Viking heritage through festivals, museums, and historical reenactments. The Viking Age remains an essential part of their national identity, serving as a reminder of the resilience, ingenuity, and adventurous spirit of the Norse people. The Nordic warriors who changed the world. The Vikings were far more than just fearsome raiders. They were explorers, traders, settlers, and innovators. Their voyages across the seas, their cultural exchange with other civilizations, and their lasting impact on the lands they touched all contributed to shaping the world we know today. The Vikings' influence can still be seen in our languages, our myths, and our historical understanding of the medieval world. At History Facts and Mysteries, we believe that understanding the Vikings helps us appreciate the complexities of ancient cultures and their role in shaping the modern world. The Norsemen were true pioneers, and their story is one of bravery, exploration, and transformation. Thank you for joining us on this journey into Viking history. If you enjoyed this exploration, be sure to subscribe to History Facts and Mysteries and click the bell icon to stay updated with more historical mysteries. Share your thoughts and comments about the Vikings below. We'd love to hear what you think.